Hi there, thank you for watching today. I want to show you the easiest method to transfer your data from SPSS into Mplus. First off, let me just mention a few things that are very important to know aboutMplus's ability to read in data. The first thing is that Mplus can only read in certain types of files. My preference is to use the tab delimited files, and those are those that end in the .dat. I believe it can also read in .csv files, so if that's your preference, you're welcome to use those. Another preference for Mplus is that all of your data has to be in numeric format. So if you look at our data set here, this very first column, make, all the variables are string. So if you wanted to actually use this column as data and read it into Mplus, you would need to first recode the values into numeric format first off. If you don't care about that variable, you just drop it from in the transfer and don't convert it over, which is what we're going to do today. Another thing that Mplus likes or prefers is that it actually only reads in the first 8 characters of your variable names. So if you have long variable names, it will only read the first 8. This becomes problematic if you have variable names that are identical on those first 8 characters. So you want to be sure when you're putting the variable names in that the first 8 characters of the different variables are all unique. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we need to recode any values in our data set that are missing into an actual numeric value. Mplus is not able to read in missing values. So if you look here in our data set in this column rep78, there are a couple rows of data where there's missing values. Mplus wouldn't recognize that. It would skip over it and read the next column of data instead, which we don't want. So the first thing we need to do is recode it. I prefer to recode values into -99s. Really, it could be any real number. So I'm going to show you how to do this in syntax. That's my preference. I always say if you don't do it in syntax, you really didn't do it at all, because it's harder to reproduce what you did. So we're going to use the recode command. Okay, and to get our variables in here, we're going to click Utilities, Variables, and we're going to select just the variables we want to recode, which are those that are numeric that we're going to transfer over. So just from price all the way to the end at foreign. Click Paste. Okay, and then we're going to tell what we're going to recode. So we're recoding anything that's missing. It's going to equal -99. And then the same with systematically missing data if you happen to have it. I like to keep it in there just in case. Do the same thing, -99, and then make sure to execute that function. Close that. So if we highlight and run this, okay, and we can check back at our data, we can see that now those rows that were missing on this variable rep78 are now recoded to -99. Now one problem that you might run into is now SPSS thinks that those values are real values. So we want to make sure we tell SPSS now that those -99s are missing and that it shouldn't try to read it in. So we're going to do the syntax missing values, and then we're going to list out the same variable names. I'm just going to highlight those and copy them over. And we're going to tell it that all values in our data set, well, at least in those variables that are -99, should be read as missing and not as actual data. You can understand how that not doing this could be problematic if you're doing descriptive statistics. Okay. Next, we can actually start our data transfer. So I'm going to show you how to do it, one with the drop-down menus as well as how to do it with syntax. So we're going to go to File, click Save As. Alright, make sure you're in the right folder. This is the correct folder for me. The default, of course, is to save as an SPSS type of data. We're going to click the Save As type and choose Tab Delimited. Now it's important that you uncheck this box that says Write Variable Name to Spreadsheet. Because Mplus can't read string values, we don't want those string values to end up in our data set. So uncheck that. And because we want to drop this column make from our data set, we're going to select the variables that we want to bring over. So we're going to uncheck the make and hit continue. and then you could hit save and it'll automatically save to the file that you specified. Like I said, I like to have a record of everything I did, so I'm going to paste that. So if you open up our syntax, you can see that we now have that save translate syntax is as available as here in our syntax. So this is the full syntax that SPSS gives you. If you're writing your own syntax and you're not worrying about the drop-down menus, not all of these sub-options are necessary. The ones that I generally keep in are the type equals tab and the encoding equals locale. Those are the necessary ones. We don't need the mapping option. You're welcome to keep it. You don't need the cells equals values. We're using the drop because, like I said, we're dropping that variable make, and the replace sub option is going to make sure that if there's a data set with that same name in the particular folder that you're saving to, that it'll automatically replace it. Otherwise you'll get an error. So we can go ahead and run this. Okay, it went through okay. Let's check our folder. We see in our folder we now have a variable, a data set called auto.dat, which is what we wanted it to be named. You can see that here. So in the syntax we chose the file path, so with the E drive, the SPSS to Mplus folder, and the file name we gave it was auto.dat. That's important to remember because you're going to refer to this file name when you open up Mplus, which we're going to do now. So I already have an input file already to go with some basic code already written. So I have here the title, which you really don't need at this point. We have our data command. At this point we tell Mplus what the data name is. We use the file is, and then we tell it that this is the auto.dat data in the folder. At this point we can give the variable name, so we have the variable command followed by names are in the list of variables, and you'll notice that the list is the same in the SPSS syntax as it is here, so I just copied these over and pasted them into here. And then you want to make sure that you let Mplus know what the missing values are. So in our case we recoded the variables that were missing into -99s. So we tell Mplus here that missing are all -99. So when it runs through and reads all the data columns and rows, anytime it comes across a -99, it skips over it and knows that that's a missing value and doesn't include it in its analysis. Okay, and then the last thing I really like to do is I want to do some just basic statistics to make sure our data was read in correctly. So I'm just going to always save and click run. And what we want to look at are the means for these particular variables. I'm just going to scroll down here in our output, and you can see here the estimated sample statistics and the means for all the variables in the data set. Now these in and of themselves are not that helpful. What we want to do is we want to compare those values to the same descriptive statistics that we run in SPSS to make sure that the data really did transfer over correctly. So we'll just do this with the drop downs. We'll do analyze, descriptive statistics, descriptives. We'll go ahead and we're going to choose all the variables, so click here. Okay, I'm going to just select the means and paste. So now we have our syntax. We can refer back to what we did. Let's execute that. Scroll down, we can see here our means for the SPSS data set. Now we want to compare those values with the Mplus values. So we see here the variable price has a mean of 6,165, and in Mplus it has the same value, 6,165. Let's look at the value for foreign. So we have foreign, mean is 0.30, and in Mplus 0.297, so you can see that SPSS did round up. But it looks like the means are the same, so you can be very confident at this point that the data did transfer over correctly, and you know that you're good to go and actually running some analysis. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you, and you're able to get going with Mplus and get analyzing.